Good morning or afternoon, I suppose. Depends on how late you sleep on Sunday. um, tried to sleep a little later, but for some reason, I can't sleep late now that the time has changed because it's just too bright out, I guess is the problem. Today we are going to be talking about the Empress. It's brought up some interesting conversations this week um, because there is the topic of gender comes up from time to time, and in two different groups on two different systems or platforms. The topic came up. Is it relevant to have an empress and an emperor anymore in the tarot? And so I'll be touching on that in a little bit. Not really a lot to share this week as far as what's new at Good Journeys Tarot and what's been going on. Pretty much still working on this project, the 78 cards in 78 weeks, doing a week ahead and daily card polls on Instagram. And that type of thing. There are two things coming up which I would like to share with you. And so I'm just going to pop over to my window here and talk about that. One is that on Friday, I will be with Amy at Strength Reversed over on her channel to talk about the Golden Girls Tarot and have a bit of pie. And we're just basically going to have an event. Thank you for being a friend, along with Jason from Tarot by the Pine. So looking forward to that. Welcome to everyone who's watching. Please chime in and share your thoughts along the way. The other thing is coming up is going to be Vlogmas from Papa Squirrel. And so I will be working on getting those videos together for you for the month of December. I will probably still do this live each week. However, I don't think I will do any weekly videos like I have been doing while Vlogmas is going on, since it is for a whole month. The last thing that's going to be happening is whoosh, it went out of my brain. Hopefully I'll remember by the time we're done talking today. Hi, Pogi. The dogs are starting to come in from downstairs, so I'll have to deal with them a little bit. So let's talk about the Empress. Let's talk about some of the cards in my collection first and what they depict or don't depict, what I like and don't like about them. Here is the Ride or Wait deck. I do love the Ride or Wait tarot. This is a more modern depiction, I guess, of an empress, but she's in the same kind of setting. There's the same kind of symbols and everything from the Waite Smith imagery. And I like that. That's something that I did with my own card, which you'll see in a moment, though I did add something to it that I think is a little different than a traditional card. Love that. A lot of cards tend to focus on that Earth Mother aspect, depicting simply a beautiful woman and Earth around her. So Curious Travels. A lot of times the Empress will be expecting. Some people are not a fan of this, and we'll talk about that why in a minute. But it is a very traditional idea about this card. You'll also see here the pomegranate, which some people, when they look at the Waite Smith imagery, say that these are all pomegranates on her gown. I've always thought they were flowers, and I've looked really hard at them, and I fail to see how those are pomegranates. They don't look anything like Pixie's depiction of pomegranates in The High Priestess, though I know that pomegranates are associated with fertility, and so as a result, that would make sense in this card. But I always thought that they were flowers to represent beauty, Venus, that type of thing. I thought this is a lovely depiction in the Light Seers Tarot. We get the idea of the creation of the world, so to speak, and which is something that we're going to be chatting about in a minute. This Empress, while not expecting, is nude. This is something that pops up in some more modern decks, but in earlier decks, you don't really see that. You see more the portrayal as an empress, someone who's bathed in luxury versus someone who's connected to the earth in this manner. This is one of my favorite cards. It's kind of a the Empress is of the earth. She is part of the earth. She's connected to the earth. This is the Bonestone and Earth Flash. Do love that. And sometimes you get cards where they try to focus more on the authority of the Empress, because in this image we do see that she has a crown and that she has a scepter, so she does have some authority. But there's also this idea of luxury and femininity and beauty and connection to the earth. You don't really get that from this card as much, though you do see some of the symbols from the Smith-Waite imagery, like the crown of stars, which have different meanings depending on whose book you read. And we'll talk about that. Another depiction of kind of an authority figure is this Empress from the Spirit Keepers Tarot, and rather than the stars, you'll actually see the zodiac there, which is one of the interpretations of those 12 stars on the crown. She has authority within the universe as a whole. She's important as an aspect of the universe as a whole, kind of idea. Many people want to rename this card because we don't typically have emperors and empresses anymore. And so we get a lot of Earth Mothers. They're from the Green Witch, depicting the expectant Earth Mother. We have this card from the Hip Chick Tarot, which calls it Nature. And this card is definitely connected to nature. But this card is also connected with the idea of nurture. And so in the Numinous Tarot, it's actually called the Nurturer. And I think this is what I'm actually going to be calling my card. At least that's how I depicted it when I mocked it up. And so let's talk a little bit about that idea that not using the name of the Empress and that whole idea of femininity for a moment. The topic, like I said, came up twice this week in different platforms that I'm in, once on a Discord server and once on Facebook, about, we don't see gender that way anymore, gender as male and female, but it's actually a spectrum. And I wanted to share a thought on that. And it is basically this. Let me pull up my screen here. Whoops, come on. There we go. So spectrum actually means is something used to classify something, right? So, or to suggest that something can be classified. So like gender, for say. But it's usually in terms of a scale with two extreme ends, right? And the way I like to think about this is, like, let's talk about grayscale, right? That is a spectrum between white and black. And so you have all of these different shades of gray in between, but at a certain point, there is so much black that it ceases to be gray and it is black. And on the opposite end, you have so little black at a certain point that it ceases to be gray, but it is white. And the same can be true for a rainbow spectrum, right? You've got your purple on one end and your red on the other, or maybe your blue on one end and your purple on the other, but eventually those colors meet. And at some point, there's a separation of those colors, right? And so when I think about a spectrum, I'm thinking that it has to have a beginning and an end. And for me in the tarot, that's what these cards, the Empress and the Emperor, represent. These are the extremes, right? This is like, you know, the feminine and then the masculine. There may be a spectrum in between, but these are the ends, right? These are the extremes. And that's what the archetypes are in the tarot to me. These are like the epitome or extreme of an idea. And so I think that it's still valid to have a male and a female representation that way, with the understanding that we see that archetype differently depending on who we are and who our querent is and the cards around it. So while we may be getting this energy that is a nurturer, someone who is creative, who is expresses unconditional love and support and encouragement, it could be anyone of any gender identity, right? And when you see my card, I'll explain how I address that a little bit in my interpretation of it. But that's just my thought on this idea that, this dichotomy is outdated. It To me, it's not so much outdated as is that our understanding of it may be outdated. The original understanding of it may be outdated. Um, but even on a spectrum, you have to have the two ends um, to relate everything to. And I think that's what these archetypes do. So my coloring of the Empress this week, I really didn't try intentionally to stray much from the White Smith. Um, I wanted to make her appear that she's not necessarily the young child bride that she appears in the Smith Waite, by making her hair silver. Because if she does have authority, i.e., by the crown and the staff there, then she could also be an older, wiser person, um, in that sense. Um, and so that was pretty much the only change I intentionally made. The color of the dress was more of a artistic choice because of the colors available to me, not so much that I thought it needed to be pink, because it's about a female. This card, while we do typically think about femininity, about the male versus female aspects of the tarot, um, it really is about um, life force and creative force. And that is symbolized through the fall or river that's in the background, that flow of life. And which is constantly changing, right? It's never the same water twice, but it still looks the same. And that's the same for us as human beings. And that's an idea that comes through here, that things are constantly changing, being created and nurtured. And there's also this idea of abundance in this card, which is symbolized by the wheat in the front of the card. I think that's a really important aspect. I love to see if they change everything else in the card, as long as there's wheat or grain prominently displayed, I'm happy with the card, right? Because I want to see that abundance. In many ways, to me, the Empress is like the um, Nine of Pentacles, except that she is no longer bound by the confines of the garden wall, right? Her domain is all of nature. It is all of the earth. It's all of the land, not just being comfortable in her own garden, right? Very similar energies for me. Um, And while this card can be associated with things like motherhood and fertility, it can also be associated with pleasure and sensuality. She's sitting on all of these cushions and in these very elegant apparel, and so that idea is there of comfort and of beauty. Fruitfulness is there. Um, in the shadow side of this card, it be about a creative block. It could be about someone who is overprotective, but it also could relate to that idea of fertility, being infertile, or unexpected pregnancy, or unwanted pregnancy, perhaps. But it doesn't necessarily have to be about those things. Every card in the tarot should always be interpreted by the context of the question, the querent, and the cards around it. So this card could simply be about creativity and nurturing your own personal comfort, as much as it is about the femininity, the beauty, the fertility aspect of the card. And there's more than one way to read it every time. So let's talk about those stars. There are 12 of them. And so many people will say, well, that's the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, Waite himself, in his talking about these, say that this is the astrological elements, right? These are the 12 astrological signs. And I think that many, or most of the books anyway that I've read, lean towards it being the 12 astrological signs. But you are going to see people who say it's the 12 tribes of Israel, particularly those who are coming at this from a Kabbalistic standpoint, trying to relate everything to uh, Judaism, or in some cases Christianity, even having it represent the 12 tribes. Personally, I like the idea of the zodiac. We saw that actually depicted in the Spirit Keepers Tarot. In her new edition, she actually changed these from the 12 astrological glyphs from Western astrology to the 12 Chinese zodiacs. So it's still 12, and represents basically the all encompassing of all of the universe. But it's a different way of depicting it in 12. And I've done something similarly with mine, changing the way that I depict the 12. So let's take a look at the one that I created. Let's see. Sugar. So this is the card that I created, and I actually did this before I studied the books this week, and then I went back and I read the books and I took another look at it. And so the important aspects for me, again, for this card are the abundance designated by the wheat, for the life force, that creative energy flowing through us, that is depicted by the river there. And that it be an adult who has, in some sense, some authority. And as I was searching for Creative Commons imagery, I came across this imagery, and I thought, I actually like this for a couple of reasons. One, it denotes motherhood without it being an expectant woman. Also, while it's clear that they intended this to be a woman, in reality, this could be anyone with long hair, the way that it's depicted. But the energy I was going for here was the idea of unconditional love, of nurturing creativity and passions. So the story here being that the child has created this crown for her, out of the daisies in the field. And so you'll see some of there are actually 12 daisies in total in this card representing the zodiac, some of which have been presented to her and some which are still around them. But I liked this idea for the Empress because I felt like this could be a trans woman, this could be a man with long hair, this could be anyone really who is nurturing this child and the creativity they have expressed by making this flower crown for them. And so, as I wrote about this week in my guidebook material, I referred to this person as an adult, not necessarily as a woman, but as an adult. And I will probably go back and do something similar with the Emperor. One of the reasons I've been using silhouettes is to try to keep them generic in their presentation. So let's take a moment and shuffle the cards and see what card we are going to be looking at next week in our study. And it's getting a little thinner. We're now up to card number 19 in this series and in my creation of the deck. And this week, our card will be, okay, it is the Five of Wands. It's very interesting. We are a quarter of the way through this deck now, and we still have not seen any aces or any court cards. So that's 20 cards that haven't come up, and I'm really shocked. I think it's going to be interesting to see what the last card is. And I have a feeling I'm going to end up doing a bunch of court cards all at once. And I feel like we keep seeing wands as we work through this. This, again, is the Five of Wands, and that is that Saturn and Leo energy. So fives are where we get a little bit of conflict going on. And so I'm looking forward to working with this and seeing what we can't come up with in the next week. So be paying attention on Instagram for what I might do with that. And I want to remind everyone about the events which are coming up. Don't forget Friday on Strength Reverse channel. We will be doing our Golden Girls. Thank you for being a friend. The Major Arcana with a side of pie, as well as Vlogmas coming up. I have been trying to decide what deck to use during December. I always want to use this deck, which is the Prisma Visions Tarot, because I like the way they look like lights, right? But this card bugs me because I don't know if it's my eyesight or what, but it doesn't make any sense until you read the book and realize that there's a wolf down here. And you read what the actual significance of this is. I love the concept of this deck. I find it very hard visually for me to figure out what's going on in some of the cards. And I disagree with their seasonal associations. So it's a little awkward for me. But I think I'll be working with it unless someone has a really great recommendation for a deck to work with during the holidays. I realized I don't really have decks that have themes around seasons in my collection necessarily. In fact, when we did the Halloween prompts earlier on last month, I have some decks that are a little bit darker, but I don't really have any Halloween themed decks. Definitely none that are holiday centered. One last thing is on Wednesday, I am doing a hashtag mashup. This was an idea that I got from a video that Peekaboo Rose did on her channel. And decided that I would mash up two tags that I've been wanting to do. One being Only 10 Decks from Katie Flowers, and the other being 5 Years, 5 Decks from Simon at the Hermit's Cave. And you'll find out why I mashed them up on Wednesday. Until next time, everyone, good journeys.